Mr. President, I want to thank the Senator from Illinois, Senator Durbin, for his interest in this and his participation in this, his ability to explain it, and the way that he's brought a lot of people along on helping out with this bill. He's been a great replacement, and we've made more progress than we ever have in the other 14 years of working on the bill. So I thank him for that and his ability to explain things so clearly. I also want to thank Senator Lamar Alexander, who helped us to change this bill in the last year from about an 80-page bill to an 11-page bill and made it states' rights. As Senator Durbin so eloquently explained, this takes action by the states. This is just to clear up the Quill case that made it a little bit confusing about whether they could charge tax or not, and did challenge Congress to fix the problem. And the solution that Senator Alexander came up with condensed the bill down considerably, and I think made it a lot easier, but it made it a states' rights issue, so that the states have to take some action. I'd thank Senator Heitkamp as well. She's brand new to the bill, but has more years of experience than anybody, because she was a part of the Quill case when it came up. She was representing North Dakota in that case, and that's the other side of the case. And so she can explain the intricacies of that and the challenge that we were given, which had a number of reasons why it didn't happen earlier. One of the reasons is that 20 years ago, the internet was in its infancy, and nobody knew what its capabilities were going to be. Most people didn't even know it was out there. And that's changed over quite a period of time to where it's now one of the handy tools that everybody uses. And we've come to recognize that there are apps that are available there that will answer any question, and there are sources of information that will provide us with what we need to know on virtually any subject. I think that's probably put some encyclopedias out of business, but it's made information more readily available. It's made products available that people didn't have availability of before. But it's creating a bit of a dilemma that marketplace fairness straightens out. And today we're scheduled to vote on the motion to proceed to the bill at 5:30. And I do strongly encourage my colleagues to vote yes, and let me explain why. As Senator Durbin said, I've been working on this sales tax fairness issue since joining the Senate in 1997. And I may have a unique perspective on the dozens of proposals that have been introduced. For instance, I've worked sales tax from a number of different aspects. I worked the sales tax issue when I was in the Wyoming legislature. And I do know that when the legislators are considering sales tax, they didn't intend to discriminate against the people that are in the communities, that hire the people in the communities, that pay the property tax to the communities, that participate in all the community events. And they definitely didn't anticipate that they were going to be the source where people could come in and feel and touch and try on the product and then check the barcode with the cell phone. That's one of those advances that's been made now in the internet use. And then they find out that there's a lower price, which is usually based on no sales tax. I'm pleased that some businesses across the nation have said that isn't fair, and they've decided to voluntarily do the sales tax, and there is no problem with them doing that. I've also been a retailer, so I know that feeling of having, my wife and I had shoe stores, so I know the feeling, again, that the senator from Illinois described, of people coming in, trying it on, feeling it, making sure it was the right size, and then checking to see where else it's available. And it is discouraging when the sales tax is what the difference is. As a former small business owner, I believe it's important to level that playing field for all retailers, the in-store, the catalog, and the online. So an outdated rule for sales tax collection doesn't adversely impact particularly small business and Main Street retailers. I know a lot of yearbooks would never be published if it wasn't for the support of some of the local businesses. Thousands of local businesses are forced to do business at a competitive disadvantage because they have to collect sales tax and use tax, and the remote sellers don't. And in some states, that can mean 5 to 10% price disadvantage. We should not be subsidizing some taxpayers at the expense of others. All businesses and their retail sales should be treated equally. Now, as a former mayor, I know that sales taxes go to state and local governments, which brings in needed revenue for maintaining schools, fixing our roads, supporting law enforcement, fire protection, those first responders that we're always so conscious of, particularly today and through the last week. If Congress fails to authorize states to collect tax on remote sales and electronic commerce continues to grow, we're implicitly blessing a situation where states will be forced to raise other taxes, such as income or property taxes, to offset the growing loss of sales tax revenue. Do we want that to happen? I don't think so. We need to promote economic growth, not stifle it. Now, as the Supreme Court identified in Quill versus North Dakota decision in 1992, the Quill decision challenged Congress to come up with a better system, a way of making it fair. Now, the local brick and mortar retailers collect sales taxes, while many online and catalog retailers are exempt from collecting the same taxes as a result of that case. And that was based on whether they had a nexus. Nexus has changed dramatically since that time. That used to be where you could go and actually pick up something, but now it's where you can order something. And that can be even moved around the country virtually at will. So if we designated some states as not having to do it, websites could be set up in that state for people to sell through from anywhere. So the taxes need to be collected, it needs to be fair, and right now it's not only fundamentally unfair to Main Street retailers, but it's costing states and localities billions in lost revenue. The Supreme Court invited Congress to address this issue, and we stalled. Now, we know that early on the internet was new, and now everything's done on the internet. So now is the time for Congress to act, and many Americans don't realize that when they buy something online or order something from a catalog from a business outside of their own state, they still owe the sales tax. I know from being a legislator that was part of what we put in place. And there is a form in Wyoming that you can get and fill out and pay your tax. Now, it's pretty hard to keep track of it, particularly on smaller items. It ought to be easier on big items, but I do know that there are about 3 people that comply with that. So for over a decade, Congress has been debating how to best allow states to collect sales tax from the online retailers in a way that puts Main Street businesses just on a level playing field with the online retailers. So on February 14th, 2013, the bicameral, both houses, House and Senate here, bipartisan Republicans and Democrats, put together a Marketplace Fairness Act that was introduced to close that 20-year loophole that distorts the American marketplace by picking winners and losers, by subsidizing some businesses at the expense of other businesses, and subsidizing taxpayers at the expense of other taxpayers. All businesses and their retail sales and all consumers and their purchases should be treated equally. The bill also empowers states to make the decision themselves. This is not Congress saying what has to be done, whether they collect them or not. If they choose to collect already existing sales taxes on all purchases, regardless of whether the sale was online or in-store, states will be able to if this bill passes. If they want to keep things the way they are, that's a state's choice. That's why this bill is a states' rights bill. The Marketplace Fairness Act does not tax internet use. It does not tax internet services, and it does not raise taxes. It gives states the right to collect what's owed by the purchasing individual. Some argue that the bill is a disguised attempt to create taxes. It is not. Consumers are already supposed to pay taxes and use taxes in most states for purchases made over the phone, by mail, or by way of the internet. I mentioned that most consumers are unaware that they're supposed to pay a tax on purchases that the retailer does not choose to collect at the time of the purchase. So I want to provide some highlights of what that Marketplace Fairness Act actually accomplishes. The bills give the states the right to decide to collect or not to collect taxes that are already owed. The legislation would simplify and streamline the country's more than 9,000 diverse state tax jurisdiction and provide two options by which states could begin collecting sales taxes from online and catalog purchases. The bill also carves out small businesses so that they won't be adversely affected by the new law by exempting the businesses with less than $1 million in online or out-of-state sales from the collection requirements until they've had a year when they've had more than $1 million worth of sales. And this small business exemption will protect small merchants and give new businesses time to get started. And as has been mentioned, when they meet that level, then they have to be provided with a program that will do the calculations for them, provide for submitting the revenues, and also hold them harmless for any errors that there might be in the program. So don't let the critics get away with saying that this kind of simplification can't be done. The different tax rates and jurisdictions are no problem for today's software programs. When you order something online, you have to put in your zip code. The zip code will tell what the tax is for whatever jurisdiction you live in. So as a former mayor and state legislator, I strongly favor allowing states the authority to require sales and use tax collection from retailers on all sales for each state that chooses to do so. We need to implement a plan that will allow states to collect revenue using mechanisms already approved by their local leaders. We need to allow states the ability to collect the sales taxes they already require. If enacted, it would provide approximately $23 billion in fiscal relief for states for which Congress does not have to find an offset. This will give states less of an excuse to come knocking at the federal door for handouts, and will reduce the problem of federally attached strings. Of course, a lot of people don't realize that the federal government is out of money. And that's shown by what was done through the sequester, because the federal government usually pays property tax to states and localities that have federal property. And that amount has never been equal to what other people would be paying in their property tax, but it has been a show of good faith that they recognize that with the government there, that there is a loss of revenue and that the federal government should do something. So there is a tax level that they've been paying. It hasn't gone up much, and it hasn't gone down much until this year. And then as part of the sequester, decided that they'd withhold 5 3/10% from all of the states and all of the local governments. That's called payment in lieu of taxes. And that's one way that that the states and the counties have lost money, and a way they're going to have to make up for if that continues. But there's also the possibility that the revenue that they take in from this can reduce something like property taxes. So for many years, I've worked with all the interested parties to find a mutually agreeable legislative package to introduce and ultimately enact into public law. This year, Senators Durbin, Alexander, Heitkamp, and I worked together with 25 of our bipartisan Senate colleagues to produce a bill that assists sellers and state and local governments to simplify taxes and use collection and administration. We're working with our House supporters, which would be Representative Steve Womack, Jackie Spear, Peter Welch, and John Conyers, and have found common ground on this important issue to move forward with a bipartisan, bicameral bill in this Congress. And I want to publicly commend all of my Senate and House colleagues in taking a leadership role in working on this important issue. Marketplace Fairness Act is about states' rights, and it's about fairness. On the budget bill, we had a vote on this, and I was very pleased that 75 of the 100 senators voted in favor of making the marketplace fair. So I strongly encourage my colleagues to vote for the motion to proceed on S-743, the Marketplace Fairness Act, tonight at 5:30 when we have that vote. I'm hoping that they will duplicate what they did before and support the goals of states' rights and a level playing field for all businesses.